You're probably a fan of the animation in Marvel movies. There's a lot of cool, awesome action scenes, and maybe it's even been your dream to animate some of those action scenes, animate on those movies for a living. Some shots like this, or like this. But you've been, at this point lacking the skills to pull anything like that off. At least at that caliber for a movie or like a game cinematic. Maybe the body mechanics has been just confusing the hell out of you, how to get as much weight or power into a move, or even just how a hip should properly rotate from move to move. Maybe you feel like your workflow, is really lacking, like there's something key that's missing, or you feel like you don't have a workflow at all that's very clear. Whatever the reason is, whatever the case may be, I'm going to walk you past those struggles and get you animating some cool superhero shots. Today, in day 8 of the 28-day animation challenge, we're gonna start animating Thor calling down lightning with his hammer, Mjolnir. By the way, if you have no idea what this 28-day animation challenge even is, just click the card up here. The challenge intro is gonna catch you up on all the details that you need to know. For this Thor animation, I started the planning phase a bit differently than the other challenges. What I did first is I went and shot some quick, messy reference for this idea I had in my head. I had this series of movements that I envisioned Thor doing that would keep the body mechanics cool, but also simple, since we're still kind of warming up to a full body character. So what I did is I got a front and side view in separate takes just off of my phone of Thor summoning the hammer, catching it, and then calling down the lightning. Now, ideally, I would have captured this front and side view with 2 separate cameras. That way, every time I acted things out, all of my takes would line up perfectly and I wouldn't have done something a little bit different on my side view than my front view. But in this particular case, there was a couple of kiddos around, so I was in a bit of a rush to do this. And I wanted to point this out because I feel like a lot of people just avoid the planning phase for the setup time, the hassle, to shoot the reference or to take the time to do that stuff. And they end up skipping it, and then they never really get a plan or they never get a reference. And the point I want to make here is any kind of reference is better than no reference at all. Any kind of plan is better than no plan at all. And in general, the more time you take to plan your animations, the more likely they are to succeed and look really great. So here inside of Maya, I've got the Thor rig, I've got the hammer, I've got that, just situated here so I can get that set up whenever I'm ready. I've made a cube for the ground. I put that on a layer so I can't select it, even with poly select on. And I've also brought in my reference movie. And I'm just gonna hit play on that so you can see that. Now, the first step that I'm gonna take inside of Maya is to really play around with this reference. I'm not gonna pose out my character and just dive right in. Rather than doing 2D animation here, we're gonna work more with reference on this one. And the first thing I'm gonna do with this reference is, you can see I've already set a keyframe on this frame offset on frame 1. I'm keying this frame offset because I want to change the timing of this. I want the timing to adjust. So I'm gonna go here from frame 1 and map out how long it takes me to kind of get into that first key pose. I don't mind that time. I think that time feels pretty good. And then for the hold, I think that's just taking a bit too long. So I'm gonna, stamp another key here, and I'm gonna try to speed this up. Okay, and then I'm gonna change that time as well. Try to get through most of that here on 32. That's like 12 frames. Let's see, boom, 20, and then let's see how much we need to ramp this up to really start moving. there. That way we're not in that so much longer. We've shortened that down quite a lot. We could do it a little more. Just to get that sense of timing. I think this, as he catches the hammer, we can make that more intense than how I'm just like, you know, acting this out without a hammer, you know, to really catch. And I'll slide this here, and then I'm just gonna speed up to really where that hold begins. Boom. And I think there's more impact there. We're not able to like clearly see necessarily every frame of that reference, but we don't need to, because it's more important to get that timing closer. And maybe that's, you know, a tad too fast. We could really feel that impact though, right? Boom. So it's adding a lot more energy to that moment that wasn't there when I shot the reference, and I had this really even timing through the holds. And so here's another hold where I think I'm gonna speed this up because it goes on too long. So I'm just gonna try to ramp through this a bit quicker, see how that feels. And I'm gonna bring my time slider down here to around like 80 frames or so. See if we can kind of keep it within that. Okay. Boom. Boom. Maybe I'll have this take a little bit longer. Boom. And then I think this ending hold is gonna work out fine. I think that's gonna be plenty of time to where it doesn't, for the hold, for us to really read that hold, and then for us to, and for it to not feel too slow through there. So yeah, I think that's a nice timing adjustment for us before we even start blocking. With those timing adjustments to the reference now, I'm going to do something I commonly do, which is create some thumbnails on top of that reference to study the key poses, figure out what my breakdowns are a little bit more, understand more of what's happening with the body mechanics side of things, and then maybe even push some of these poses if you know, if they're not quite as good as they could be, right? At least try to do that with my drawings, and the whole time I'm wrapping my head more around with what my character is going to be doing before I even take the time to pose out the character. You know, the character has all those controls on it. It takes so much longer than making a drawing, and even retiming like the animation itself on a character rig takes a lot longer than what we did with the reference already. So this planning here is really saving us time and really kind of guaranteeing our success before we even get started, and we know exactly what to do when we start blocking. Here I'm just going to be using the blue pencil tool to do the draw overs inside of Maya, to show you a little bit of a different way to do it. You could also do this in Sync Sketch if you prefer. There's also the grease pencil tool built into Maya up here, and depending on what version you have of Maya, the blue pencil will be built in too. But I'm just going to show you how this would work. And again, you know, maybe you're using Blender, they have their own kind of grease pencil. If you're using a 2D animation, you can go through this same process, you just won't even have the rig. So maybe this is even your blocking pass, you know, depending on how you're working. So I don't think I particularly feel like comic book hero pose here. I'm gonna push the weight shift kind of to be more to one side, and kind of push the chest up and out and have this kind of S curve with the head tilted down. I think that's going to be my default opening pose. I could maybe even have Thor with the fist here, you know, just to make him a little bit more angry or so. And then I'm gonna just go ahead to the next key pose, which is gonna be here on 20. So here on this pose, I'm gonna try to really get this line of action. I like that. I like the hand opening up here. Like the head that I you know, the head position feels very focused. And then the weight is really shifted over to this side. So I think we get a nice kind of flip there. I just varied up the line thickness. And this arm, I think, is pretty cool how that's tucked in, although I think it would be nice to see a little bit more of it, like the elbow and the upper arm there. See how that is, pose it out that way. And then let's keep going here. So kind of holding this pose. As we hold this pose, the weight keeps shifting over, so the weight goes further up into the screen left for that hip. And we're continuing to twist this way. So that's what we'll do. We'll definitely keep that twisting. It's getting kind of scribbly and messy in there. Hopefully against the fall along with what I'm going for. This arm kind of comes up a bit, right? So I'm trying to get more in the mind of like all the little things that are happening here, because this is what's gonna cross our mind as soon as we start posing the rig and be like, okay, what do we do with that hip rotate? And the head just kind of continues coming over left. What do we do with that hip rotate? What do we do with that arm as it's holding there? You know, what is the arc on that hand? That kind of thing. That's what this is helping us wrap our mind around. And here, at least with this angle, you know, we could probably position the character to be more 3/4, but I would like this pose to be more 3/4. We just lose so much of the other arm and the hammer that I feel like there's probably a position where we can have, see, the chest not quite as turned from us. Like this is the side of the chest. Right? Something along those lines. And then maybe we can see more of that arm and see the hammer as a result. Just flipping here, this weight really shifts back to this screen right side. On that hip. So the hip is kind of going higher up over here as it twists this direction. See, my foot kind of banks a bit. And then if we keep that chest, a little bit more, turn 3/4. Again, this is something that we'll probably be able to sort out easier in with the rig and the camera, because I'm not a 2D animator. Maybe you are. And maybe I can kind of keep the hammer somewhere here. I'm drawing that a little bit big. We can have the camera view maybe a little more like this. Actually, I don't think I'm gonna do that just for this pose. I like this pose. This camera view will stay similar to this, and then we'll just tweak the pose more than the camera. Yeah. So like, it's not like I have all these things figured out already the second I started animation. I do have to think about, you know, how I'm going to present things, how I'm going to stage things in the nicest way, how I'm going to, you know, showcase as much pushed line of action and twisting in the body as I can. And I will draw the other arm, but I think it's going to be useful to draw that in another color. And so this weight continues to shift. Over here. Most of our twisting has stopped, and I was just kind of holding there, which is interesting. Then we get that roll in the hand that's closest to camera. Then we lose even more of like this arm here. So I'm gonna need to push that. I'd say it's probably just coming down a little bit more. We'll just subdue kind of like how much that arm moves, and I don't want it to go away. Right. And we hit this pose here, kind of getting that line of action. Really want to get that weight shift of that hip coming over here and that chest going way up with the shoulder and the arm all working together. Head's kind of countering. You can see the spine comes way over. Kind of giving us that. That feeling, and I think this pose communicates pretty well. This is Thor, you know, calling down the lightning with the hammer, and we'll want to make sure we leave room for the hammer here at the top. I don't think I'll come up maybe up as much on the heels. Maybe that'll feel too strained for Thor, but we'll see how that goes. In general, I just like how it like punches the air here. What we can do, I think, in this moment is really overshoot this. So we'll stretch that arm, maybe even, and that chest and everything goes farther than it should for the settle. Maybe it's even stretching everything past what it normally can do, and then we, like in one frame, we pop back down into like a normal straight. So I'm just gonna write here that we're gonna overshoot this. Boom. Okay. And I can really feel the chest whipping here and the spine whipping through there. And then we kind of get that curve. Right. And I can make this stronger if I let the chest start to do its twist here and I keep this arm down. So with these kinds of things, I can start deviating from the reference already and figuring out how to push this. So I'm not just like making the pose necessarily more appealing from camera, but I'm also thinking about how I can push the power of a move to get more oomph out of it. Like this move is really being driven up by the hip and then the spine and then that arm rather than the arm coming up first. So I really want to get that into my breakdown, this like sense of lift right here in this hip. And then how that's coming into the spine. It's got this fun like drag over there, right? Into that. That's going to give that move the power along with the overshoot, you know, so we don't come into that. We don't want to ease into that position with a hand, otherwise it'll be too soft. So hiding our reference, we get this. We don't really have the sense of timing here when we hit this pose exactly, so I gotta add that drawing. We got a little bit of a breakdown kind of started here to kind of feel how that motion connects. We could add a little bit more to that. I think that would be helpful. And I think it would be good here to define that hold, how long this opening pose lasts before we hit this and just kind of break that down. So we could put a few more of those drawings in there just as guides for us to start that blocking before we move forward. And we can leave the reference off and really just think about it, which could lead to some interesting results. But I think I'll put in a few more of these before I do that. So turn on the ghosting here, since this pose is pretty close. I think, let's see, we're gonna bring the hand up. So I think what'll happen is here, since we're kind of inventing what happens on this pose in terms of this arm, is I'll bring it down. Bring it down a little as it's holding it, kind of starts going down so that it can come up like in an arc like that. Hopefully that's clear enough to see. I know this stuff is kind of, with the ghosting, is probably getting a little messy. I'll essentially just retrace this though. I could duplicate the pose, but you know, I'd have to add the arm there anyway. And then we could put in a breakdown here and like hide the ghosting. What's kind of happening here is I'm doing primarily just a twist, and at the same time my foot is lifting, my screen left foot is lifting, and that arm is coming up and forward. What I'd like to do here though is in the animation exaggerate this so we can have the chest here, and I think the arm will still be down a fair amount. It can just maybe just barely start going. Let's see. Yeah, so we just keep that arm, I think, fairly steady. It'll ease out of here. So it starts to come up, but it's very slow to do so. And we get most of the twist that we need from the hips and the chest already to really start that motion. And this foot is going to be picking up. And then stepping forward. So it'd be a little bit of a lift in here on the hips as well. And I think that'll take care of that. We might speed that up a bit. We'll see how it feels in the animation. And then I know in the reference we gave that move just some extra time there. And then here I don't like how my hand comes in. Like, it wouldn't make sense if I catch a hammer to bring it in towards my face like this. So I'm going to keep the arc kind of going this way with that hand. And I kind of get that started with this pose, except this fist would probably be out more. And the other thing that would change here is the chest right now, because I can't catch a godly hammer, you know, and have that basically shoot my arm back. I can't act out the arm leading that action, which is what would happen. So the hammer would hit the arm, that would launch back, and then my chest would go. Whereas here, my chest is twisting to bring that arm back, like it's like a reverse punch. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to push this as if the hand is further back and the chest is still forward. Like, you can see we're kind of twisting already. There's this twist here, but I'm gonna when I pose this out, keep the chest, I think, fairly straight on, because here it's turned to the side, and then it starts to turn, but not as much as my reference, and then it's all the way kind of the opposite direction. But I really want it to feel like that arm gets shot back there. And I could delay the head, you know, as well. I could kind of maintain maybe like a little bit of a tilt to the chest like there is from the pose just before it. Okay. And then here I think is fine. You know, we could put kind of like some holding frames in there in terms of that arm motion swinging around. And then here we didn't capture when we really like hit this pose proper. There's a bit of a drop in my hips here as I hold this too. So we can get it to kind of pop up around here, and then I think that's around the highest point, like right here on 57, and then I drop down some. So there's even a built-in overshoot into my hip movement there, the core of my body. That's kind of subtle, but it's helping to sell that punch here. And we're gonna clean this arc up too. Let me see, let me just go here. My fist kind of comes in and comes back out. I'm just gonna simplify that. And you know, remember to keep my arm back some. Probably a lot more than this because of the previous frame. And I'm just going to draw this as like lower. Here, I'll go back here and exaggerate this one since this is the frame that we really hit the overshoot. I'm going to try to draw that up higher. And then bring it down. Slow this down further. Probably get even punchier than we are doing with the timing here in the reference because you just really control things more. I'm just gonna delete this one, I think. I don't need 57. And if we hit play. Yeah, we can feel all that, I think, connecting pretty well. Could hide the reference even. And I think it's pretty clear what's happening, even if we don't have all the holding frames there, right? We can still get the essence of what's going on. And hey, by the way, if you're very serious about your animation skills and you want to become a pro animator faster, so you can work in Marvel movies, other kinds of movies, games, whatever it is, you should unlock Pro Mode if you haven't already. It's an option to you. What you'll get is you'll get harder animations that are going to build off the ones that you're doing right now so that you can become a pro faster. They're only available though to the serious animators who decided to unlock them via email. There's no real excuses though. It's free to do. You just go to unlockpromode.com and then you'll be on the fast track to become a pro animator. And you're gonna be surrounded by other people that are trying to do the same thing right now. They're really committed week after week and helping each other out. So you'll be in good company. With that reference studied, retimed, and drawn over, we're ready to go into blocking. So I'm gonna now switch over to get Thor prepared here for all that. Just gonna go to a different camera since we got the sketches there on that perspective one, in case we wanna keep it in that position. I've got all my selection sets here, including for the hammer. Now with the hammer, we can parent it directly to the hand, and that's all we necessarily have to do. Because most of the time the hammer will be attached to Thor throughout this animation. So we don't have to get crazy with constraints or do anything fancy if that's a hurdle for you, whether you're in Maya or Blender or whatever you're using. And the other way that you can introduce the hammer flying into the scene would be to bring in a second hammer and just key the visibility on and off. I'm going to do the parent constraint setup here just to use the one hammer so you can see how that's done. It might be handy for you to start learning those things. But I'm not going to try to go too heavy into detail with constraints on this animation. So I'm just going to go up here, create a locator. And since we're constraining, I'm going to turn this arm into IK. This is the one that catches it, right? And then this locator that's down here, use the outliner to grab it really quickly. I want to snap it up to this controller, so I'm going to use the parent constraint just to snap it up there. So I'll select this, select the locator, do not maintain offset to snap it into position. Now, did I select it here? Yeah, now it's in position. It's just very, very small, and I don't have it showing in this perspective view. That's why we couldn't see it. So here, the size of it, I'm just gonna scale this up so we can see it. But I don't need the constraint anymore, so I'm just gonna delete the constraint on that locator, and that's done. Now that locator is there. So the reason why we're getting a locator is if we just parent constrained the hammer to the hand directly, we would basically be able to move the hammer with or move the hammer and have it move the arm, but we wouldn't be able to animate that hand anymore. We wouldn't be able to rotate the hand, kind of grasping the hammer differently or anything while it's there. It would be constrained in position. So this locator is going to be what drives this hand. So I'm going to have the locator selected, select the hand. I'll check maintain offset here just in case. And now this should drive the hand. And it does. So now I can move this IK hand with this locator. Okay. And then I am going to parent this here and get the hammer into position where it needs to be. We can make it perfect later. We'll get it pretty close for now. Just kind of fitting right there in the grip. And then I'm going to use this controller, so this will be stuck to or driving this locator, and I need to group this locator and have this hammer then constrained to the group. And then I can now move the hammer and move the hand all in one go. And I can have still animation on this locator to where I can animate the hand moving up and down the hammer. So now we're all set up there. So like I can reposition here to get the hand, in a better spot to hold that hammer, which we'll refine later as we animate. But now that's all set up in a decent spot. We can start blocking him out, posing him out. So I'm gonna just go to our opening key pose here and set that up. So I also made a shot camera here. I made this shot camera so that we can have it locked and then we won't move it. We'll always know what our main camera view is going to be, and then we can animate over here in this one. The other reason for me creating the shot camera is to play around with the camera lens so that we can get some distortion. When we have this pose where he reaches out for the hammer, we can really get that hand appearing closer than it otherwise would be for our camera. So that should just make it look cooler. And we're gonna introduce probably the camera being lower than this. So I'm gonna first just kind of create, I think, the opening pose, and then we'll come back to this camera and adjust it. So I'm going to go into our regular perspective, and then we see that pose. All right, so this is where our posing practice comes into play. I'm gonna make that reference unselectable real quick. I'm gonna shift over here, bring these arms down, Make sure I incorporate some of the shoulder. And get some of that angle change. Let me swap over to the other camera really quickly. And I don't mind seeing the reference here. So I'm going to try to build in some of that confidence. Here. Give him that arched lean back to the body. And then bring this forward. Open up the stance a bit. And we're going to have a bit of twist here away. And then I'm going to use the neck and stuff to counter that back. Something along these lines. Now, it's easy for the fingers, the hands to look odd if they're just left default, but if you take time to put one pose in to where the hands have kind of a natural curl, then you can go most of your shot without having to worry about them and having them look odd. And I'm just gonna try to get away with just using these controllers here without getting too crazy detailed yet on those hands. I'd like to block out all the major poses, then maybe spend more time on this if it seems appropriate. Just trying to get that natural kind of curl from this angle. Those hands seem relaxed. Grab all of them and then maybe bring the whole thing down a bit. Relax them, keep them open, but don't keep them like straight out like a big old flag or flat hands, And then I think we can have a bit more like twist like so. In there. And according to our sketches, I can pretty much hide the gravitator at the moment. According to our sketches, we were gonna go for something a little bit different for this arm, just to make him feel a little bit tougher, a little more superhero-y. And my brilliant idea that came in the moment was to have a kind of like a fist pose for just like a clenched fist here, waiting before he reaches for the hammer. I think that should give us maybe like a little nice squash and stretch to go from that closed fist to reaching out for the hammer. At least that's the quick idea that I had. And then we're kind of losing the pole vector there. It's right there, so bring that elbow out. Incorporate that shoulder as part of it. And then maybe tilt him forward a bit. So we got that nice kind of curl there. That foot further back, maybe. Don't want to lock it out though. His foot's a little bit more forward to support that weight. It really feels like he's standing on this leg more. Okay. So now we got that, and I'm going to make sure that I key everything here. So I've got an all Thor select. I just key everything. You know, I could make sure that I don't have keys on this stuff. You know, I just don't think the rig's that heavy to where it's going to matter. And the one thing that is different here in this opening pose is just where this hammer is going to be, because our constraint won't technically be on. So we need to key the constraint being off here because the hammer hasn't arrived yet. And we're going to have that off screen. So the group constraint here can be turned off. So if I go to the group that has the locator there, we can key this here, and then we can turn that off. And now that hand is free, and we kind of need to repose it. Okay. And then at some point over here, you know, it'll be back on. Okay. So these first 30 frames or so, we won't need it. Not sure why I put that on 70, but it did. And then because it's a constraint, we don't want it to slowly constrain over 32 frames like it's doing right now with just those two keys. So I'm gonna make that 0. Okay. Also gonna go into my animation preferences and just double check, because mine are set to auto right now, and we wanna be in flattened stepped as we're blocking this out. All right. And then we'll grab the hammer on this pose. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this to like 32, 33, just so we have that position saved. And then I'm going to kind of fly this off screen, maybe rotate it how it could fly in. We didn't really sketch that out in the plan, and that's something that we could have done, is like drawn how the hammer flies in so that it's appealing. We'll just figure that on the fly. For more complex shots, like if that hammer was you know, doing a really complex move, we'd want to really make sure we plan those things out. But anyway, we're getting warmed up to body mechanics right now, so it's all good. And then here, the locator, it drives the hand, was way off. We got to key that. And we can't see the locator in this view, so I'm going to turn that on right here. And then just reposition that hand back kind of where we had it. Should have definitely just turned that parent constraint off, but hey, these things happen when you're talking about your process and trying to animate at the same time. And we were going to have maybe more the hand like this, right? And bot's telling us to save. And somehow this is not part of the all select, I guess. So let's make sure we key everything there. Okay, so it seems good enough at the moment. I think most of them are keyed. Yeah, that's all keyed. Hands are just being weird there. And then we're gonna go for a quick curl to get that fist. Much like the other hand, we're gonna just try to get this close with as few controls as possible. So I'll need to come in here and grab these. Close enough. Kind of going penetrating through the hand there, but if that becomes a big deal later, we'll clean that up. I think maybe we have a bit too much weight shift here. And then we moved everything to frame 5, so I'm going to copy 5 to 1, so that's the same between these couple of poses. We've got that hold. And then we're going to put in the next pose. We're going to skip that breakdown and go to the next key, which will be this, and really work out this pose. So I'm going to have the cog coming forward. I'm not going to put the twist on here because it twists everything. So I'll put the twist within the spine itself. So we twist here and twist there. The weight's going to shift over. To the side, so I'm going to put that hip higher up on that side. This hand is going to reach out. Now, the ideal thing to do would be to have this screen left hand in FK. It's getting a little weird there and keeping that constraint working. The ideal thing to do would be to have this arm in FK until the hammer kind of arrives and we do like a swap in there, because when we get some free motion from the body here. So I may make that change here later. This rig does have a built-in IK-FK swap for the limbs. I haven't used it before. And I may need to just kind of get the picker set up for that to make that work. Then I think the tilt, but I think it'd be worth it to get that picker going just to make those swaps, if nothing else. And then here the head is really kind of, neck and head are kind of tilting this way to look for the hammer as this arm is coming up and over. Just keep an eye on our pose here. Oops. Move that. So we're just making sure to consider the shoulders in that pose. You can look, it looks a lot more anatomically correct. And then we're gonna go for like a fist here as well. I'm just going to go ahead and close the thumb there. And then think we take a step with this foot if I remember. Yeah, we take a little step, which is nice because that foot was further back. And there's a bit of rotation there too, which is nice because you can change this. So I'm going to copy that little bit of rotation from 5, and then have this come further forward. And then I'll have the knee, let's see, have the knee follow here. What should we follow? It's set to axis. I'm not really getting a big change there, but I want that knee to be more in front of the toe. And then I'll probably lift him up a little bit. And these hands are going to be open. Just seeing what I have rotation on for these fingers. Probably gonna put these two together, the ring and the pinky finger, and kind of do something like that. And they feel a little too spread out, so I'll bring them together. A little bit more. Or maybe I can have this closer to here and kind of spread the pinky more. And this pinky, just the way it's curling is kind of weird. So we got something like that for our pose here. Boom. Reaching out for it. And I'm gonna extend that hand more just because I've got too much bend here. So grab the locator, go world space. Really want that hand to reach. And this is where like that camera view is going to come into play. So we're going to tweak the camera next. Maybe we're getting too much color there from the rig. Not sure if that's something we'll control, but it's got my eye. It's caught my eye right now. So shot cam, we moved the character. It's fine because we're going to be repositioning this. I'm gonna go kind of down here, I think, to keep Thor powerful. And then we're gonna change the lens as well. So instead of a 35 focal length, maybe we'll do like a 25. Not anything too crazy, or maybe 20. Not anything super, super crazy. I don't know if that's gonna be too pushed for like when he goes away. But we'll see how that plays out. And this camera is going to be static, so there's going to be positions that won't be necessarily as ideal for the camera position, but we'll see how that goes for the rest of our poses and maybe adjust it again. Here I'm going to turn the neck and the head to look more where we want it to. Look more kind of where he's going to get the hammer from. Oops. Got to include the locator with the all select, I think. And then here. Go for something like this, and then we'll grab the head, grab the neck. So it really feels like he's looking more towards where he's supposed to. Maybe the chest is turned a little too much. And let me go into object space here and just try to keep reaching out. Kind of pushing that curve here a bit. Okay, and now we got that pose, that camera. I'm gonna lock this camera down again until we feel like maybe making an adjustment. And then I'm gonna make sure all of our curves are gonna be in stepped here for the time being. And this hammer needs to be in stepped. So we're just going to keep it off screen here. And then it'll be in position here. And see what's going on with this locator. Not sure why it popped over here. I don't remember setting it over there.
Now it's back in position. Seems like my eyes just being weird there. This one's kind of a breakdown actually, but it's the point where the hammer connects with the hand. It's going to be one of the earliest points where that parent turns on, so that's why we're doing this one, and the locator just needs to be repositioned. Yeah. I'm going to get the hand close to where it needs to be, and then I'll use the hammer to move the arm to kind of the where the pose has got it. We can come back and adjust this later too. And then I'll just do a quick curl here. One of the things that we decided to do here that was going to deviate from the reference was really to have this arm shooting backwards, because it's the arm that gets basically shot backwards by the hammer. That's probably like dragging a certain angle too, and so we're like there, and then I think actually maybe we'd have this angle, or we'd have this angle. And the hammer is kind of the key this pose right now for that hammer to be there. It's kind of looking at how this is going to connect, and do I want the arc to come up and down into this? I think so. And then I want it to go wider. It's okay for me if this ends up like looking a bit broken in terms of the chest and the arm. I really want the arm to lead this, and then it pulls the chest. I can kind of start to move this here. And with this pose, I'll set a keyframe there on the cog, even though I'm not really moving it yet. I'm not going to get too much into detail on this, because for me it's more about getting that hammer position in the arm, and then I will figure this pose out more once I get the key pose in there. That comes after. This pose where he's reaching for the hammer, I was just thinking about it. Probably be better if we get more lean forward, like he's really reaching, right? And then, so I'm kind of keeping that curvature going back to keep him confident, but also I really want it to feel like he's coming forward a little bit. Go object mode. Just keep reaching out the direction of the hand at the moment. We'll check our camera view. Kind of breaking our safe action there. This is where it's easy to read what's going on. We might change the camera just to accommodate that space a little bit more. Maybe that's going to be all right. We'll see. Okay, so then he's gonna catch the hammer. I might push this further back. Just looking at the camera view. I think we could get away with something like that. All right. And I'm gonna key 20 to 30, so it's the same. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reach a little bit farther here. I'll come back to these holds. Yeah, let's come back to these holds. It's more fun to pose out a new pose. Let's get all those major keys in there first. Just gonna grab the spine here and I'm gonna twist around a lot. And I remember from our drawings, which I can pull up here, we were trying to show more of the front of that chest here and not have it be so turned away, and then show more of that arm so we can kind of keep our eyes on the hammer. This foot's kind of banking. I think our hips are kind of coming down a bit, which is going to help those legs. And kind of feel the squash on that knee. And then here I'll add a little bit of bank. I think this is the one Is this the one I want to use, or is this one pivoting better? No, that's something else. Okay, so we'll use the bank here to kind of lift that foot on the side. There's more swivel on the other foot. There's kind of a pickup in the heel, that's what happens. And this swivels, and that's not pivoting correctly. So I'm going to use this to swivel. Let me go back to the other perspective really quick. Okay. I don't really like the fact that it does that to the toes. Do we have another toe pivot? That's what we're looking for. Toe pivot. So pivoting on the toes just a little bit. Just a little bit. And then I would say the weight is coming back to this right side somewhat. And we're coming back as well, coming down. So there's a little bit of movement there. And we can try to push those things to feel it more and more. Here, I'm just gonna go ahead and try to clean up this torso bit. Let's start with the lower spine now. Arm in position. Down and back. Where is that elbow? Staring at me right in the face. that shoulder down here. Bring this down, I think. So we can clean up that neck. It's doing so much work to kind of stay there. Have a bit of a tilt to the side in the head. Makes sense because the momentum's gonna pull the body that direction. You should be leaned kind of this way. So if you just caught it and he's kind of recovering, right? So we want that lean back there. We might end up using the cog to kind of push this a bit more. But I also don't want him to feel like he's like really out of control from catching it. I just want the catch to be impactful, so. We don't want to get him too out of balance from this impact. And I'm just gonna go ahead and push this reference back a bit. How does this look from camera view? Okay, he looks really leaned back in camera view. Well, some of that's our lens that we chose to use. We're really losing that arm here, so I'm gonna try to bring that out. At least show the hammer. Maybe chill out that lean back a bit. That's cooler, you know. We're getting that depth too to the arm that's coming forward. We spend our time on these key poses because they're the ones that, you know, we're gonna see. We're gonna let people see. They're really gonna notice these poses, and we really want them to communicate as best we can what's happening here, right? And even this one, I'm wondering. And then we're gonna copy this to 45 because that's how long he holds, and it's just gonna be, you know, that arm moving a bit and a little bit extra twisting and moving back to this right side with the cog. Kind of feeling more, I think there's more shift here. 45, and then we'll come back and adjust that hold too. And then I want to put in the hammer in the air pose here on 56, 50, 59. So we're holding it here by 59. We get our overshoot a little bit a couple frames earlier on that arm, and then we're holding that until 74. So I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go to 59 here, and then try to get that started here. Let's see. So the cog is gonna come forward. And up. And there's a bit of toe swivel there. That's something that we could probably do more of and get away with it. And then there's probably some foot roll as well there. A little bit on the other leg as well. Let's close it out here. And then the pelvis is really going to swivel over here. Weight's going to shift. We're going to go for that curve over here on this side. Shoulder is going to really help lift. This neck is coming around. His head is looking up. Kind of countering the chest a bit with the neck. Praise Odin as a kind of what this pose is screaming to me. And then with that there, I'm gonna get to this arm. Bring this one down with the shoulder a bit. Push that curve more. Some counter more there. Our weight's probably a bit closer to center. Got that twist all the way up through there. Okay. Still thinking I can lean him back. Maybe more here. The weight forward on those tippy toes. Try to rotate the hammer up. Wrist is doing too much of the work there. Might be where I need to, I'll probably need to adjust the locator here to get a grip on things like this so the wrist isn't too bent, but we still have the hammer up in the air. That rotation feels a bit better. Not sure if I like the tilt on this leg and if we really needed this bank. Kind of want that foot out here. Maybe just a toe pivot is enough. This arm's coming back a bit. I don't really worry about legs locking out too much here. I do keep an eye on them, but I know that there's a lot of ways that we can keep the legs from locking out. And we're just close to one. We don't have one at the moment. So maybe that's something that frequently you think about, but you could use heel raise and stretch and all that to make that stuff work easy enough. Let's see how this looks in camera. Boom. Okay, camera, we are too far back for this lens. I think I can maybe close the gap here. Keep that arm in. this feels really far away in our camera view. And really high up as well. I'm gonna do something like that. Maybe bring it forward more, bring it down some. Here, let me see if I back up the camera. Something along these lines. My camera's animated. I don't want that. Just gonna delete everything there. This is where it stays. Let's see how it looks for all the other poses. Yeah, that hammer's a bit closer to the head. Might seem like we're spending an excessive amount of time on this pose, and I mean, that's true. We are spending a decent amount of time on it, and but that's for good reasons, because this pose really matters, and these little tweaks we make are really important to getting this pose feeling just right. This pose that ends the shot, you know, that makes it sing, that final moment, that godly moment, right? For him, where he's calling in the lightning. Yeah, I think that feels pretty close to what we're after. Getting that arm closer to the head was really key. We can also tweak the wrist here a bit. It's going to be something like that, and that will play out better. And we'll just add a little bit of movement on the hand as that arm is going up to make that work. So I'm going to copy that over to 74. That's how long we're holding that position. There's like a little dip down in the hips. Here, and then it keeps coming screen left. So that's what I'm gonna do. Keep going screen left, keep coming forward, bring it down a bit. So there's that motion there, right? And then at the same time, that body is continuing. This starts to come over and this kind of drags there. And his head rotates. We don't need a ton of movement here because he is calling the lightning. I may not have him kind of turn his head that much or even move his arm as much as what's happening in the reference. So this might all be overkill. Easy enough to tone that stuff down later though. It's not like this is a huge move. Just going ahead and trying to make sure this feels like a hold, you know, to where he's not frozen, but he's not moving too much. We get something close to what we're after. Right. Just probably a little bit more twist here. Little bit of change here. Let's say this kind of ever so subtly keeps coming back. Pushing that reverse C here. Maybe it looks up a little bit more. I think I like that better. I don't really feel his head move away from us as much as, like in the reference, my head isn't moving away from camera as much. Be careful of that between there. But yeah, I think that's a good enough setup for now for that hold. And let's go tweak some of those other holds and then we'll put in some of those breakdowns. Catch is very soft right now. So I guess I'll go to this hold next. And here we're just gonna continue twisting this. That hammer goes back. It's going to be a lot of movement for the hammer if I do that for those frames. So. Maybe that's too much movement on that hammer here still. Something's going to help us to see that that arm and that hammer is going to be the weight shift that happens here. And it's kind of moving back as well. And I would say probably even twisting at the hip level a little bit more. That's probably going to feel pretty drifty with this arm. If I have that much movement, I mean, we can tighten that stuff down, add more frames to really control it. I think I'll just lessen it for the moment. And then, so that's that hold. That feels like a hold now, like there's something happening. Should probably make sure you consider all the rotations. There's probably a little bit of rotation there too. Probably have another frame here, and this will really define that impact and that pull on the hips to get here. I think I'm gonna push him actually further back here, just looking at the leg from this side view. This bank also comes back down. Might as well get that in there while I'm thinking about it. And then our other hold here. Just intensifies. We're coming forward onto this foot. And it looks like we're coming up a little bit as well. And we're probably gonna need some heel here for that. And then we're twisting a bit more, putting a bit more weight on that forward leg. We're kind of coming over to screen right. And then this is gonna be it's more twist than anything happening here. I don't lean in towards the camera a whole lot more with the torso area and the reference. This kind of feels like it pulls up a little bit. I have a big head move to the left right here. Then my head just kind of juts over there, as if it was dragging back the neck. So might be something I see if I can get away with it with the rotation here, and then if not, maybe I'll add some translation for that. And this hand now is pretty bent, and the reference keeps coming up. And the other arm keeps coming back. I want to feel this actually push in more. Just working out that arc there, seeing that playback. And then let's get this opening hold in there. And we'll put in some of those breakdowns. So this opening hold, it's pretty simple. It's just going to be like instead of going right to this like twist though, what's happening very subtly in my reference that I'm gonna use here is there's a little bit of a twist away, and I could just discreetly turn all this with the micro manipulator here. You can do it by hand. I'm just doing like I'm just using the tool to make sure I don't rotate them too much there. Oops. To the wrong control. Or wrong keyframe there. So on 5, I'm gonna add just a little bit of a twist away. It's like a little bit of an anticipation before we twist this direction. Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna add some keep alive here. And this is that constrained hand, which we didn't put an FK. I might take some time to just throw in an FK here to do the same pose just for this section where it's not holding the hammer, just so it doesn't look IK at any moment. It's a lot easier to get that natural arcs and connection with the body if it's not kind of like this arm, you can see it's moving even though we haven't animated it. It's because it's really attached to that chest. I might have it come back, actually. And we're going to step forward, so I'm going to add a little bit of back little bit of it down here to anticipate during that hold subtly. Then here, I'm gonna put in the breakdown now. So let me hit save because we've kind of got our key poses and holds there. So with this breakdown, it's gonna be the chest and really this torso leading this twist before that hand really takes off. That's what's gonna make this more powerful. So in a lot of ways, it's the reverse of this, where the arm is getting pulled back and it's gonna pull the whole body. So I'm just gonna go in here and I think the first starting point for me, just get everything really moving here. Grab all the spine and the cog, arm stuff, and I'll just halfway tween it. This is going to include that locator. I think I forgot to do that before. But we're gonna hang this hand back, and again, I'm gonna swap this into IK or FK so this feels a bit more natural. I'm gonna have the shoulder, if anything, starting to come forward, but I want that chest to really lead this. So I'm gonna have a lot of twist in the chest and have that arm delayed. This is one of those things that can look weird if if it's in slow motion. You can see this frame. I'll get this closer as well. And we're going to be taking a step here, so I'm going to be bringing this forward, probably dragging it a little bit, and leading with that heel. And it's a subtle step though. And then because we're taking a step there, and you can see it in the reference, I come over this screen right leg more. I think I'm actually gonna keep the shoulder back here. This again might be pushing it too much, but I'm fine with exaggerating at this stage. So we want to find out how strong we can make all of these actions. And now even seeing this doesn't feel that bad if I just bring the chest back some. I'll keep this arm. Back. We need to make that punchy, but it's starting to work. I think a good connecting breakdown here will work well for us. Let's go back to the... Yeah, we're gonna put it somewhere around here, I think. So we'll do a similar thing. This is why it really matters to have the why it really matters to have the oops, let's get the camera back kind of there in those sketches. That's why it helps to really have good solid key poses. So that you can quickly, like if your key poses are working, you should be able to put in a breakdown that makes sense, that works. I'm gonna tween everything here. See, to kind of get things moving quickly, see if we get something that we like. I like this arm pulling up like it has in my reference, and then how it comes down. I think that's gonna help, and it feels like the hip really takes off here in terms of going up. So I'm gonna lift him up quickly. Pull him forward. Trying to get some of that speed in there on the cog. And here again, I'm gonna, just like that opening breakdown, I'm gonna have the chest here, I think. Maybe even twist a lot more. And same deal here, let's make sure this is the rotate Y, yep, for the twist. Twist that there. And same deal here. Okay, maybe it's too much. And then keep this shoulder back to delay this. There's a nice arc here where it kind of comes down and then I do this uppercut. We're gonna try to remember to kind of get that in this motion. We want to feel it like it's like an uppercut, you know. But I also want to keep it back as much as we can here. Boom. And the spine as we drew here, let me swap camera. Has this kind of S curve into it because it's like coming over to hit that shape, that C shape. So C shape to C shape in terms of that spine, and then we got that S curve here, so I'm gonna try to build that into the pose. Whoops, I keep moving this camera around. And then should have put those drawings on a different camera. Like the shot camera, I made that first. That's what happens when I'm trying to think of a million things and share it all with you guys. Say it out loud so it makes sense. And that means I'm tilting here, probably. Go gimbal mode. So now I'm really watching those spine controls to see if I'm getting that change in there. I'm watching that head to make sure the head kind of keeps coming screen right. See how that looks in camera view. Probably gonna have the hammer come back here, something like this, come down, and then, you know, really start this launch up. And maybe I can make that arc wider too. Like if we did this pose, that arm coming up. Then we brought it down, kind of rotated it back. Just trying to get some nice shapes there. And then the arm here is kind of doing that. That's closer to what we want. Yeah, that feels better, I think. And there's those extra keyframes that I just threw in there really fast on the hammer that we don't need here. Well, I'm just making the playback look weird. Boom. So that the reach out for the hammer still feels soft to me, and the catching of the hammer especially feels soft. So we might punch up that timing there. We'll push the spacing as much as we can. We'll see how that develops. But overall, I think we've got a lot of life into these poses that we did put in. We spent time on them, but they're the most important ones to spend time on. And I can really feel the torque in the body. And from here, I think it's just really punching up those eases, and then in the extreme moments where things are faster, so that we get as much energy out of it as we want, even though he's not really moving all over the room, right? He's really working within this kind of same spot. There's some light steps and swivels on the feet to kind of maintain his spot here. So next phase we'll really break this down even further with those eases and try to get more oomph out of each of these sections.
Hope you had a blast with this Thor animation. We're just getting started. Now click or tap the screen for more animation lessons, and I will see you in the next animation challenge. Happy animating.